Wake up between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m., and something extraordinary begins to happen, not outside of you but within you. At this sacred hour the world is silent, distractions are asleep, and the conscious mind loosens its grip. This is the moment when the subconscious becomes most receptive. Whatever you plant in your mind during this time is accepted without resistance and begins to shape your reality. When you wake before the noise of the world, you are no longer reacting to life. You are creating it. Your thoughts become instructions. Your words become commands. Your beliefs begin to reorganize your future. In the new year, those who rise at this hour will notice clarity replacing confusion, confidence replacing fear, and direction replacing delay. Ideas arrive effortlessly, intuition sharpens, opportunities align. This is not about sacrifice, it is about alignment. When you consistently wake during these hours and affirm peace, success, health, and abundance, your inner mind accepts them as truth, and what the inner mind accepts, life must express. The new year does not change because the calendar changes. It changes because you change your inner conversation. Wake up early. Speak life into your mind. Feel gratitude in advance, and watch how doors open that once felt locked. Your future is listening. In the quiet hours between 3 and 5 in the morning, something remarkable takes place within the human mind. The world is still, the noise of obligation disappears, and the conscious mind, so busy analyzing, judging, and resisting throughout the day, begins to soften. In this state, the deeper part of the mind becomes open, alert, and impressionable. This is the moment when inner awareness listens without argument. During waking hours, the mind is constantly filtering information, questioning possibilities, and defending old beliefs. But in these early morning hours, that protective barrier weakens. The mind shifts naturally toward a calm, dream-like state where imagination and belief blend together. Thoughts introduced at this time are not challenged, they are accepted. Whatever is gently impressed upon the inner awareness begins to settle as truth. This is why ideas often arrive suddenly at dawn, why solutions feel clear, and why intuition feels stronger. The mind is no longer divided, it is unified. When the inner and outer awareness work together, thought becomes power. A single calm statement repeated with feeling can reach depths that hours of effort during the day cannot touch. When you rise during these hours and remain still, peaceful, and intentional, you step into a creative state. Your words are no longer wishes, they become instructions. Your images are no longer fantasies, they become patterns. The mind responds best not to force, but to gentle certainty. A quiet conviction spoken inwardly at this hour sinks deep and begins to reorganize habits, attitudes, and expectations. This process does not require strain or intense effort. In fact, effort weakens the effect. What matters is feeling. When a thought is accompanied by calm belief, gratitude, or inner assurance, it leaves a lasting impression. The mind accepts the feeling first, then builds outward experiences to match it. Peaceful thoughts create peaceful actions. Confident expectations produce confident decisions. Over time, those who regularly use this period notice subtle but profound changes. Old fears lose their grip. Reactions soften. Confidence grows without effort. Circumstances begin to shift in unexpected ways because the internal pattern has changed. Life responds not to words spoken aloud, but to beliefs quietly held. This is why consistency matters more than duration. A few minutes each morning used wisely can redirect an entire year. When the mind is impressed repeatedly with harmony, success, health, and purpose, it begins to operate from those assumptions automatically. Decisions become clearer. Opportunities are recognized faster. Actions align naturally with desired outcomes. The early morning hours are not magical by themselves. The power lies in the mental state they provide. Stillness removes resistance. Silence amplifies intention. In this space, the mind is not being programmed by the world. It is being guided by inner choice. As the new year unfolds, those who master this inner discipline discover that change no longer feels like struggle. It feels natural. Growth feels inevitable. The future begins to unfold not as a surprise, but as a reflection of thoughts gently planted in silence and nurtured with faith. What is accepted inwardly must eventually appear outwardly. And when the mind is most open, even the smallest seed of belief can grow into a completely transformed life. When everything becomes quiet, the mind finally has space to hear itself. Silence is not empty, it is deeply active. It removes interference and allows awareness to settle into its natural rhythm. In the absence of noise, scattered thoughts slow down, emotional tension softens, and attention gathers its strength. What remains is clarity, calm, focused, and powerful. Throughout the day, the mind is pulled in countless directions. Conversations, notifications, worries, and memories compete for attention, diluting intention. In silence, this division disappears. Thought no longer fights thought. Desire no longer competes with doubt. The mind becomes unified, and when the mind is unified, intention gains force. In quiet moments, you are no longer reacting to external pressure. You are responding from inner knowing. This is why decisions made in stillness feel right, even before evidence appears. The mind perceives connections that are invisible in noise. Answers rise naturally, not because they are forced, but because they are finally allowed. Silence sharpens awareness. It strips away urgency and reveals what truly matters. When the mind is no longer rushed, intention becomes precise. Vague wishes transform into clear inner directives. You no longer say, "I hope." You begin to feel this is already in motion. That feeling is what activates change. In stillness, imagination becomes vivid and responsive. Images held quietly carry more influence than words spoken loudly. The mind responds to emotional certainty, not volume. A calm inner picture, felt as real, reaches deeper levels of awareness than repeated affirmations spoken without presence. Silence gives these images weight and authority. There is also a healing quality in quiet awareness. Tension dissolves when it is not fed by thought. The body responds to the calm of the mind, and balance begins to restore itself naturally. Many people search for answers through action, yet the most powerful shifts occur when action pauses and attention turns inward. As silence becomes a regular practice, mental clarity extends into daily life. Distractions lose their control, focus strengthens. You begin to notice subtle guidance, an inner nudge, a sense of timing, a clear yes or no that does not need explanation. This guidance was always present, but noise drowned it out. With continued practice, intention no longer feels like effort. It feels like alignment. Thoughts move in one direction instead of many. Energy is conserved instead of scattered. This focused inner state begins to influence behavior effortlessly. Choices become simpler. Habits adjust without struggle. Outcomes improve because inner confusion has dissolved. Silence is not withdrawal from life. It is preparation for effective living. It creates a foundation where thoughts are chosen deliberately instead of inherited unconsciously. In this state, the mind is no longer shaped by random impressions but guided by deliberate awareness. Over time, the outer world begins to reflect this inner order. Situations simplify, relationships improve, opportunities appear that match the clarity held within. What once felt uncertain becomes steady. What once felt forced becomes natural. True power does not announce itself. It operates quietly, steadily, and with precision. When the mind learns to rest in silence, intention gains depth, direction gains certainty, and clarity becomes a permanent state rather than a temporary moment. Waking before the world begins to move creates a profound internal shift. Instead of being pulled immediately into demands, messages, and responsibilities, the mind is given a rare gift: choice. In these early moments, life has not yet begun to ask anything of you. There is no pressure to respond, no urgency to perform, and no expectation to defend your attention. This is where a different way of living quietly begins. Most people start their day in reaction. The phone dictates emotion, circumstances decide mood, and unfinished business from yesterday sets the tone for today. But when you rise early, you step outside this cycle. You are no longer responding to events, you are setting direction. The mind moves from survival to authorship. In these hours, thought is fresh and unburdened. The past has not yet replayed itself through habit, and the future has not yet demanded solutions. This clean mental space allows intention to form without interference. Instead of asking, "What must I deal with today?" the inner question becomes, "What do I choose to build?" Creation always begins inwardly. Before action takes shape, there is an image, a feeling, a decision. Early rising protects this fragile creative stage. It gives intention time to root itself deeply before being tested by the noise of the day. When intention is established first, actions that follow feel aligned rather than forced. As this practice continues, something subtle changes in identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone trying to keep up with life, and begin to experience yourself as someone directing it. This shift is not dramatic, but it is powerful. Confidence grows quietly because you are no longer waiting for permission from circumstances. You begin the day already anchored. This inner anchoring affects every interaction that follows. Challenges are met with composure instead of impulse. Decisions are made from clarity instead of pressure. When unexpected events arise, you respond thoughtfully rather than emotionally. The day may still bring demands, but they no longer control your inner state. Early rising also strengthens self-trust. Each morning becomes a private agreement with yourself. You show up before the world notices, and that consistency builds inner authority. Over time, the mind accepts a new assumption. I am in charge of my direction. From that assumption, behavior naturally adjusts. Ideas emerge more easily in these hours because the mind is not crowded. Creative insight requires space, and early rising provides it. Solutions that seemed complicated the day before suddenly feel obvious. New approaches appear without struggle. This is not coincidence, it is the result of mental freedom. As days turn into weeks, life begins to reflect this inner shift. Productivity improves, not through strain but through focus. Goals move forward because intention was set before distraction entered. Even rest feels deeper because the mind is no longer carrying unresolved direction. This practice does not add more hours to the day. It adds more ownership to your life. Time feels expanded because it is used deliberately. Instead of being shaped by external momentum, you create your own rhythm. Eventually, creation becomes your default state. You no longer wait for motivation, permission, or perfect conditions. You act from inner alignment. The outer world responds differently because you are no longer asking it to define you. When the day begins with inner direction, life follows that direction naturally. What once felt like pressure becomes possibility. What once felt reactive becomes intentional. And the future starts to unfold as something you are shaping, not something that is happening to you. In the earliest moments of the day, the mind stands at a powerful threshold. It has not yet been shaped by conversations, obligations, or emotional residue from the outside world. It is fresh, receptive, and quietly alert. In this state, ideas carry unusual weight. They do not drift through awareness and disappear. They settle, organize, and begin to influence direction. The mind at dawn is like an open field. Whatever is gently placed there tends to take root. Thoughts introduced at this time are not competing with thousands of other impressions. They arrive alone, clearly felt, and therefore more easily accepted. Because they are accepted, they begin to guide perception, behavior, and expectation throughout the day. A thought held with feeling during these hours does more than inspire. It instructs. It sets a pattern that the mind follows automatically. When calm confidence is impressed early, decisions later in the day reflect that confidence. When peace is felt deeply at the start, reactions soften without effort. The mind simply acts according to what it has already accepted as true. This is why repeated inner statements at dawn gradually shape identity. The mind learns through repetition and emotion, not through force. When a person consistently begins the day with thoughts of purpose, order, and success, those ideas stop feeling like wishes and start feeling like facts. The mind then looks for ways to express them naturally. Throughout the day, awareness filters experience based on what it expects to find. If the inner pattern is one of opportunity, opportunities are noticed. If the inner pattern is one of confidence, challenges are approached as solvable. The outer world may not change immediately, but perception does, and perception directs action. Over time, these early mental patterns accumulate. One morning does not transform a life, but many mornings quietly do. Each day builds on the last, reinforcing assumptions and strengthening direction. What began as a simple inner practice becomes a guiding structure for thought and behavior. This process works whether it is used deliberately or not. Many people unknowingly begin their day with worry, urgency, or doubt. Those thoughts, too, settle in and guide behavior. The difference lies in awareness. When the mind is guided intentionally, it stops creating by accident and starts creating by design. The power of these early thoughts lies in their simplicity. They do not need to be complex or dramatic. A calm sense of assurance, a quiet expectation of good, or a clear image of success is enough. The mind responds best to what feels natural and believable. As this practice continues, inner resistance fades. Effort decreases because direction is already set. Actions feel more coherent, and goals feel closer because the mind has accepted them internally. When the inner world is organized, the outer world begins to arrange itself in response. Eventually, life begins to mirror the mental structures formed in these early hours. Habits shift, confidence stabilizes, opportunities align with expectations. The future unfolds not randomly, but in harmony with what has been consistently impressed within. The mind always builds outward from inward impressions. When those impressions are planted at the start of the day, they guide everything that follows. What begins as a quiet thought becomes a guiding pattern, and what becomes a guiding pattern eventually becomes lived reality. Change does not occur through intensity alone, it occurs through repetition. The mind is shaped less by what is done once and more by what is done regularly. Each repeated thought, action, or inner statement leaves an impression. Over time, these impressions form beliefs, and beliefs quietly direct behavior. At first, new practices may feel unfamiliar or even unnatural. Old patterns resist change because they were built through long repetition, but the mind does not argue with consistency. What is repeated calmly and persistently is eventually accepted as normal. Once something feels normal, it no longer requires effort. Every time a thought is revisited, the mental pathway that supports it grows stronger. The mind prefers familiar routes. When positive assumptions are reinforced daily, the mind begins to choose them automatically. Doubt weakens not because it is fought, but because it is no longer reinforced. This is how habits are truly formed. Not through willpower, but through familiarity. When a behavior is repeated often enough, it stops being a decision and becomes a default. The same principle applies to inner dialogue. Words repeated inwardly with belief become the voice the mind trusts most. Small daily actions are far more powerful than occasional grand efforts. A few minutes of focused intention practice consistently can reshape years of unconscious programming. Each repetition may feel insignificant in the moment, but its cumulative effect is profound. As repetition continues, beliefs begin to shift subtly. What once felt like hope becomes expectation. What once felt like effort becomes ease. The mind stops questioning the new pattern because it has been reinforced too often to ignore. This process also explains why lasting change feels natural rather than forced. When beliefs change, behavior follows automatically. There is no need for constant motivation because the mind is acting in alignment with its accepted assumptions. Consistency also builds trust with oneself. Each repeated act becomes proof of commitment. This self-trust strengthens confidence and reduces inner conflict. The mind learns that change is not temporary or emotional, but stable and dependable. Over time, old habits lose energy. They are no longer fed by attention or repetition. Without reinforcement, they weaken and fade. New habits take their place, not through struggle, but through dominance. The most powerful transformations are often quiet and gradual. One day, you simply notice that reactions have changed, choices feel easier, and results have improved. The shift did not happen suddenly. It happened steadily. The mind always aligns with what is practiced most. When constructive patterns are repeated daily, they become the foundation of thought and action. Life then reflects these patterns naturally. Lasting change is not about doing more, it is about doing consistently. What is practiced daily becomes identity, and what becomes identity shapes the direction of life itself. True success does not begin with external effort, it begins with internal harmony. When thoughts, feelings, and expectations move in the same direction, life responds with flow instead of friction. This inner harmony becomes the unseen force that shapes outcomes, especially as a new cycle begins. Many people approach a new year by changing goals while leaving their inner patterns untouched. They plan, push, and struggle yet encounter the same resistance. This happens because actions that are not supported internally lose strength. When the inner world is conflicted, progress feels heavy. When the inner world is unified, progress feels natural. Alignment occurs when what you think, what you feel, and what you believe agree with one another. There is no inner argument. Desire is no longer contradicted by doubt. Effort is no longer undermined by fear. In this state, the mind stops sending mixed signals and begins to operate with precision. When inner harmony is established, decisions become clearer. You no longer waste energy guessing or hesitating. Choices feel correct even before results appear. This certainty is not arrogance, it is coherence. The mind knows where it is going because it is no longer divided. As the year unfolds, this inner clarity influences behavior automatically. Actions become purposeful. Time is used wisely. Opportunities are recognized instead of overlooked. What once required force now requires attention. You move with life rather than against it. External success often appears to others as luck or timing, but it is actually alignment expressing itself. When the inner state matches the desired outcome, actions align with opportunity. People respond positively because confidence is felt, not announced. Circumstances adjust because the mind is no longer resisting progress. This process also reduces struggle. When goals are aligned with inner belief, motivation becomes steady instead of emotional. You do not rely on bursts of inspiration. Momentum builds quietly because effort is supported from within. As inner patterns stabilize, results become consistent. Success is no longer occasional, it becomes repeatable. You begin to trust the process because it feels grounded. Each achievement reinforces belief, and belief further strengthens alignment. The new year becomes a reflection of this inner order. Challenges still arise, but they are approached with calm strategy instead of anxiety. Setbacks no longer define direction, they inform adjustment. Growth continues because the foundation is stable. This inner alignment also reshapes identity. You no longer see success as something to chase, but as something to allow. You become the kind of person for whom progress is normal. This shift in self-concept changes everything. Outer conditions always respond to inner conditions. When the inner world is ordered, the outer world organizes itself accordingly. Relationships improve. Finances stabilize. Opportunities appear that match your level of readiness. The new year does not need force to be different. It needs alignment. When the inner world is set in order, success follows naturally, steadily, and with far less resistance than ever before.